The wind blew through the wagon yard like it carried secrets. Dust shifted across the hard ground, catching the last of the afternoon light and turning the place into a pale, shimmering haze. A horse snorted somewhere near the corral, stamping at flies. From the open doorway of the trading post came men's laughter, hard, ugly, soaked in liquor and heat. She sat on a barrel outside, barefoot and shorn. Her hair, once long and braided, now hung in jagged ends that brushed her shoulders. The rest had been cut with a hunting knife. Beside her feet lay a torn scrap of calico, the last piece of her dress that hadn't been sold. Her eyes stared at nothing, though the dust made them sting and water. "They cut my hair and sold my dress," she whispered, voice rough as gravel. She spoke to the wind, or maybe to God, though neither seemed to answer. The name she'd come with, Anya, felt foreign on her tongue now, useless in this place. The men who brought her west had taken it from her, as easily as they took everything else. The preacher who promised her work in a boarding house had handed her off to the trader like a sack of grain. By nightfall, she'd learned that kindness was a currency this land didn't trade in. Inside, mugs slammed against tables. A man shouted something about a horse gone lame. Someone cursed back, the same voice that sold her laugh loudest. The door creaked. Light hit her face, making her squint. The trader stepped out, thick-necked, sunburned, smelling of whiskey and sweat. He looked her over like checking stock. "You keep sitting there," he said. "Ain't nobody paying to see that scowl. You do what I tell you, girl, or I'll find you worse work." Her throat worked, but no sound came. He spat near her bare feet and walked off toward the barn, where the mules brayed and men kept drinking. The sky bruised a violet as the sun dropped behind the ridge. A chill crept up from the ground. The day was dying, and with it any thought she had left of escape. She pulled her knees to her chest, rested her chin on them, and for a moment she thought about her father's farm in Poland, the smell of rye and wet earth, the church bell on Sundays. She wondered if he believed she was still alive. Then came the sound of hooves. She looked up. A rider approached slow along the edge of the yard, tall in the saddle, his duster flapping with each step of his horse. He didn't call out, didn't tip his hat, like most travelers did, just stopped near the water trough and let his horse drink. The trader saw him first and came swaggering from the barn, whiskey bottle still in hand. "Don't mind her," the trader said, nodding toward Anya. "Picked her up from a preacher caravan. Ain't good for much yet, but she'll learn." The cowboy didn't answer. He tied his reins loosely to the post, his movement steady and silent. A faint scar cut across his jaw. The eyes beneath the brim of his hat were unreadable, cool as a winter creek. Anya watched him, heart thudding for reasons she couldn't name. Maybe it was a calm in his stillness, or maybe it was because, for the first time since she'd arrived, someone looked at her without the hunger of a buyer. "Evenin'," the cowboy said finally, voice low, roughened by trailed dust. "Evenin'," the trader replied. "You lookin' to buy, trade, or drink?" "Water'll do." The trader laughed. "Ain't many stop here for just that." The cowboy's gaze slid toward Anya. Her hands tightened around her knees. She turned her face away, ashamed of her ragged state. The trader noticed and smirked. "You want her? Won't cost much. Foreign stock, but she's quiet." Something shifted in the cowboy's jaw. He reached into his coat pocket, pulled out a silver coin, and flipped it toward the trader. The man caught it midair, grinning. "Now we're talking." The cowboy's next words came sharp and cold. "That's for the water." The trader's grin faltered. "You think you're funny, stranger?" The cowboy didn't blink. "No." Tension thickened the air like storm heat. Somewhere behind them, a dog barked. The trader squinted, drunk and mean. "You riding through or looking for trouble?" "Just riding through." He tipped his hat to Anya. "You all right, ma'am?" The question startled her. No one had asked that since she left home. She managed a small shake of the head. The trader laughed again, though the sound carried less confidence now. "She ain't got manners yet. Ain't your concern." The cowboy turned, led his horse a few steps, then stopped. For a heartbeat, the yard held its breath. He looked back once. His eyes met hers. Then he swung into the saddle and rode out slow through the gate, his horse's hooves kicking up small clouds of dust that glowed in the sunset. Anya watched him go, feeling something twist in her chest. Hope or despair, she couldn't tell. The traitor wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. "Don't get ideas," he told her. "He ain't coming back." But she knew somehow that he would. Night came full and cold. The traitor and his men drank deep by the fire outside the barn, their laughter carrying into the dark. They passed a bottle, told crude jokes, forgot she even existed. Anya sat in shadow near the corral post, a rope looped around her ankle like a leash. The moon rose silver behind thin clouds. She thought she saw a flicker move along the ridge, something dark against the pale sky. A horse, slow, deliberate, watching. Her pulse quickened. She told herself it was only a trick of light. Then came a whistle, soft, distant, the kind shepherds use back home to call their dogs. She froze, looked up again. The dark shape dismounted, moved between the trees. Silent. The men were drunk enough to laugh at anything. One started a song that slurred into nonsense. Another poured whiskey into the fire, just to see it hiss. None of them noticed the shadow cross the yard. The cowboy moved like a man who'd done this before, boots light, pistol low. The horse waited tied just beyond the fence. He crept closer until he stood behind the nearest wagon. From there, he could see them all. The traitor by the fire, his two hired hands half asleep beside him, rifles leaning against the crate. He drew his revolver. The metal glinted once in the firelight. Then he stepped forward. "Evening, boys." The laughter died. The traitor squinted through the smoke. "You again?" "Reckon so." The cowboy's tone didn't rise, but it carried. "You got something don't belong to you." The traitor chuckled uncertainly. "You mean the girl? You planning to buy her now?" The cowboy cocked the hammer. The sound cracked through the yard. "Let her go." The traitor's smile turned mean. "Or what?" "Or I start with you." One of the hired men reached for his rifle. Too slow. The cowboy swung the revolver, struck him across the jaw. The man dropped with a groan. Another lunged. The cowboy fired once. The flash lit the wagon yard bright as noon for half a second. Then darkness fell again, broken only by the fire's jump. The traitor stumbled back, hands raised. "You kill me, you'll hang for it." "Maybe." The cowboy grabbed the rope tied to Anya's ankle, yanked it loose, and jerked his head toward the fence. "Move." She hesitated only a second before she ran, skirts tangling around her knees. Her heart hammered in her chest. The traitor shouted something. She didn't hear it. She heard only the clatter of hooves as the cowboy's horse stamped and snorted, sensing the urgency. They reached it together. He caught her by the arm, lifted her into the saddle before he climbed up behind her. Bullets cracked through the dark. One hit the fence post. Splinters flew. "Hold on," he said. Then they were moving fast. The horse lunged forward, muscles bunching beneath them. The night wind tore at her hair, carrying the smell of smoke and dust. The ground rushed past in a blur. Behind them, men shouted, horses screamed. Shots rang out wild and far. The traitor's voice faded into the wind. Anya clung to the saddle horn, feeling the stranger's arm firm around her waist, steadying her. She dared glance back. The yard was shrinking, the fire a distant spark. She turned forward again, pressing her face into his coat, breath shallow. "Where are we going?" she shouted over the wind. "Away." "That's not a place." "It is tonight." The land opened wide before them, miles of scrub and sagebrush glowing under the moon. Coyotes yipped somewhere off to the east. The horses' hooves drummed like thunder rolling across the plain. She didn't know how long they rode. Time lost meaning. The stars wheeled overhead, and the chill bit through her thin dress. When he finally slowed, dawn was touching the horizon, a pale line of silver over the mesas. They stopped near a dry creek bed. He dismounted first, then helped her down. She stumbled, legs shaking. He caught her by the elbows, steadying her. "You all right?" he asked. She nodded, though she wasn't sure it was true. He untied his bedroll, spread his coat on the ground. "Rest. We'll ride again once the light's full." As she sank down, exhausted, she looked up at him. "Why did you come back?" He paused, wiping the dust from his revolver before holstering it. His eyes were on the horizon. "Didn't sit right," he said finally, walking away. She studied his face, trying to read it. There was no pity there, only a quiet resolve, like a man who'd made peace with his own ghosts. He turned to tend the horse. The wind stirred the dust, carrying the faint sound of hoofbeats still distant but chasing. By morning, the men would ride after them, and she'd have to decide, run again, or trust the one man who'd stood between her and the fire. The first light of dawn spilled over the horizon, pale and cold. The plains stretched wide and endless, each blade of dry grass silvered with dew. A low mist hung in the valley, and somewhere far off, a coyote cried to the fading stars. Anya woke to the smell of smoke and horse sweat. She was wrapped in a wool coat that wasn't hers. The fire was only embers now, but its warmth lingered. Her body ached from the ride, her arms bruised from clinging to the saddle. The cowboy sat a few feet away, hat low, cleaning his revolver with deliberate motions. His horse grazed quietly by the creek, its breath misting in the chill. For a moment, she only watched him, unsure if she should speak. He broke the silence first. "You sleep any?" Her voice came small. "A little." "Good. We'll need to move once the sun's up." She pulled the coat tighter. The fabric smelled of leather and dust and something faintly human. She wanted to thank him, but couldn't form the words. Gratitude didn't come easy after what she'd lived through. He poured a bit of water from his canteen into his hand and rubbed the grime from his face. "You hurt anywhere?" She shook her head. "No." He studied her for a beat, then nodded. "We'll ride west. There's an old trail station near Dry Creek. Used to be safe ground. Might still be." Anya hesitated. "Will they follow?" "They'll try." His tone was flat, certain. She felt the weight of it settle between them like a shadow. She touched her ankle where the rope had rubbed raw. The skin was torn, ringed red. He noticed but didn't speak of it. Instead, he reached into his saddlebag, drew out a strip of cloth, and handed it to her. "Wrap that," he said. "Don't want it festering." She obeyed, fingers trembling slightly. When she finished, she looked up at him. "Why did you come back?" He holstered his gun. "Didn't sit right, leaving you there. That's not reason enough," she said softly. He gave her a long look. "It was for me." They broke camp in silence. The horse stood steady as he helped her into the saddle. His hands were rough, steadying, careful not to linger. When they rode out, the mist had begun to lift. Behind them, the open plains shimmered, empty and merciless. By noon, the sun had burned away the chill, and heat rolled off the earth in waves. The land stretched flat for miles, sagebrush, brittle grass, scattered rocks. Nothing moved except the wind and the distant shimmer of a hawk circling overhead. Anya's legs ached from riding. She'd never been on a horse before the night he rescued her, and every jolt drove the soreness deeper. Still, she didn't complain. She'd learned that words were precious things. Better to save them for when they mattered. The cowboy, he'd told her his name was Luke Harland, rode with quiet confidence. He guided the horse along a faint trail that wound through the low hills. Every so often, he'd scan the horizon, checking for riders. When the sun climbed higher, he halted beside a stand of cottonwoods near a creek. The horse drank deeply. Luke dismounted, tied the reins to a branch, then nodded toward the water. "Drink, rest a spell." She knelt by the creek, cupped the cold water in her hands, and drank. The taste was sharp, metallic, alive. It stung her cracked lips but steadied her breath. Luke tore a strip from his shirt and knelt beside her. "Foot," he said simply. She hesitated, then lifted her bandaged ankle. The skin beneath was raw, the wound angry. He poured a bit of whiskey from his flask over it. She hissed in pain. "Sorry," he murmured. "Better than infection." She nodded, eyes watering. As he wrapped the foot, she watched his hands. Strong, scarred, deliberate. His sleeves were rolled up, revealing a pale mark on his forearm, a half-healed burn. She wanted to ask how he'd gotten it, but stayed silent. When he finished, he leaned back on his heels. You got family? Her throat tightened. Not anymore. He didn't press her, just gave a small nod and reached for his canteen. The quiet stretched between them again. The wind shifted, carrying the scent of rain from somewhere far off. After a while, she spoke. You fought in the war? He paused before answering. Yeah. Which side? The one that lost me a brother and a leg to a cannon shot. She frowned, glancing at his leg. You walk fine. Not fine. Just learn to hide it. There was no bitterness in his voice, only weary truth. He tossed her a strip of dried meat from his pack. Eat that. We've got a long way before sundown. As she chewed, she asked, Why go west? Why not settle? He looked out at the empty land. Settling's for men who can sleep easy. I can't. She understood more than he knew. Sleep had been her enemy for months. Each dream a reminder of hands that took without asking. When they set off again, the sky had dimmed to gray, clouds rolling in from the east. A hawk screeched high above. The first drops of rain hit the dust, raising a smell like smoke and metal. They found shelter beneath a rocky overhang. He started a small fire, the flame weak against the damp air. She sat across from him, knees drawn up, eyes fixed on the sparks. I came from Krakow, she said suddenly. There was no work. They said America had plenty. I believed them. He looked up, waiting. The preacher who brought us said he'd find us homes. He sold the younger women, so we owed for the passage. Her voice faltered. One girl tried to run. They caught her. I never saw her again. Luke's jaw clenched. And the law did nothing? There was no law, she said bitterly. He stared into the fire for a long time. The flames danced in his eyes, reflecting something dark beneath the surface. This land's got shared devils. Some just hide behind prayers. Rain hissed against the rocks. She watched him, unsure whether the anger in his voice was for her sake or his own. When the rain stopped, the world smelled clean, washed bare. He rolled out his bedroll, but didn't lie down. She noticed he kept his gun within reach even as his eyes grew heavy. Before sleep claimed her, she whispered, Thank you, Mr. Harlan. He didn't answer, but she saw his hand relax slightly on the revolver's grip. They left at first light. The air was sharp and new, the ground damp beneath the hooves. By mid-morning, Luke spotted it, a trail of hoofprints crossing theirs from the northeast. Fresh, too fresh. He reined in the horse and studied the tracks, jaw tight. How many? She asked quietly. 3. Same ones, I reckon. Her stomach sank. From the town? Yeah, they ain't giving up easy. He guided the horse off the trail, steering them through rough country where boulders and brush might hide their tracks. The going was slow. She could feel his tension the way he held the reins, his silence turning heavy. By afternoon, the sun burned hard again, drying the earth in their throats alike. Flies gathered at the horse's flanks. Sweat darkened Luke's collar. They came upon a narrow ravine, shaded and cool. We'll stop, he said. Let them ride past if they're close. He helped her down. The moment her feet hit the ground, her legs nearly gave. He caught her arm. Steady. You're wearing thin, he said. I can manage. He looked at her, brow furrowing. You don't have to prove anything. I do, she said quietly. To myself. He didn't argue, just nodded once, respect glinting in his eyes. They waited in silence. Far off, the faint rhythm of hooves echoed against the canyon walls. Luke motioned for her to crouch low. She pressed close to the stone, heart hammering. Voices drifted on the wind, familiar ones. The trader's harsh bark, another man's curse. Luke's hand found a rifle strapped to his saddle. His eyes narrowed. The riders passed above them, slow, scanning the land. One of them dismounted, crouched, pointed toward a faint print in the dirt. Luke's jaw tightened. They saw something, he whispered. She reached out, clutching his sleeve. Please. He met her eyes, steady and calm despite the danger. I won't let him take you. When the riders moved on, the sound fading, Luke waited another long minute before rising. We ride west, fast. Once we hit the mesa, they'll lose the trail. They rode hard, pushing the horse near its limit. The land blurred, boulders scrubbed, flashes of sunlight. A rifle cracked behind them. The sound ripped the air. Another shot whistled past. Luke cursed under his breath, turned in the saddle, fired once. One of the pursuing horses stumbled. A man shouted. "Hold on," he barked. She did. Her hands gripped the saddle horn, so tight her knuckles whitened. They reached the mesa ridge, the horse scrambling up the loose rock. Dust billowed. Luke's jaw was set, eyes fixed ahead. Another bullet hissed past his shoulder. He jerked, breath catching. Blood darkened his sleeve. "Luke," she cried. "Just a graze." He gritted his teeth. "Don't look back." When they cleared the ridge, the horizon opened wide again. The riders behind slowed, tiny figures against the glare. The distance grew. Only when they vanished did Luke pull the horse to a halt. He slid down, staggering slightly. Blood dripped from his arm. Anya jumped off, caught him by the waist before he fell. "Sit, please." He sank against a rock, pale but steady. "Ain't bad." She tore a strip from her skirt, pressed it against the wound. "Don't lie to me." He gave a faint smile. "Bossy, ain't you?" She ignored it, tightening the cloth until the bleeding slowed. Her hands trembled, but she didn't stop. When she finished, he looked at her, really looked. "You ever done this before?" "No. Could have fooled me." The tension broke. For a moment, they both exhaled. The sky was turning amber now, the sun sinking low. The air smelled of dust and blood and sage. Luke leaned his head back against a stone. "They'll think twice before following through the mesa. We'll camp here tonight." She sat beside him, arms wrapped around her knees. Silence stretched between them, soft this time. Finally, she whispered, "I thought I'd forgotten what safe feels like." He didn't look at her, just said, "Ain't safe yet, but closer." The wind rose, carrying the sound of crickets. In the fading light, his face looked worn, almost peaceful. She watched him until the stars came out, wondering what ghosts chased him across this land, and if she might someday be strong enough to face her own. The wind howled across the high plains like a beast with no name. The sun was sinking low, cutting long stripes of light through the dead trees. The woman clung to the saddle, her hands raw from holding on, her heart beating against the hollow of her throat. Behind them, faint and ragged, came the sound of riders, far off yet close enough that the echo carried on the wind. "Keep low," the cowboy muttered. His voice was rough from smoke and dust, his hat pulled tight against the glare. "They'll lose us in the timber." She nodded but didn't speak. Her throat was too dry for words. The horse beneath them heaved with effort, its flanks slick with sweat. Every hoofbeat struck the ground like a drum, steady, defiant, alive. The trees ahead thickened, dark trunks closing in, the smell of resin sharp in the cooling air. She could taste the dust in her mouth and the fear behind her teeth. They had been riding since dawn, chased out of lowlands by men who wanted what wasn't theirs, a debt unpaid, a secret found, a woman who refused to be sold again. A shot cracked somewhere behind them, faint, distant, but enough to make the horse lurch. She caught the cowboy's arm, fingers digging into his sleeve. "Don't look back," he said. "They only win if we turn around." So she didn't. She faced forward, where the land rose into the ridgeline, a narrow pass burned out by lightning weeks ago. Charred branches reached out like blackened bones. Smoke still lingered in the soil. The place looked dead, but it was their only chance. The horse stumbled, righted itself, then pressed on. The cowboy's jaw was set hard as stone. He kept his gaze fixed on the pass. Once we're through, they'll never follow. Too rough, too narrow. The woman swallowed. "And if the horse breaks?" He gave a faint smile. "Then we walk. But we don't stop." The sky was bleeding out behind them now, streaks of violet and gray merging with the last traces of daylight. Every breath burned. The air smelled of soot and iron. Then a spark. A shot struck the tree beside them, sending bark flying past her face. The sound came again, louder this time. "They found us," she cried. "Hold on." The horse leapt forward, hooves striking rock. The world blurred, trees, sky, smoke, all folding into motion. The cowboy drew his rifle in one fluid move, turned in the saddle, and fired a single round behind them. A flash in the dark. A man fell. Another shout rose up. "Keep going," he barked. They tore through the narrow trail, the horse panting, the woman gasping for air. Branches whipped her face. Sparks flared where hooves struck stone. Then came the fire line, a smoldering patch of ground, faint embers glowing in the dusk. The cowboy's eyes flicked to it, and then to her. "It's the only way." She didn't argue. She trusted him, the way she trusted her own breath. He kicked the horse hard, and they plunged into the smoke. Heat wrapped around them like a fever. The air shimmered with orange glow. She coughed, her vision swimming. The horse's hooves skidded once, then found purchase. The smell of burnt pine filled her lungs. When they broke through the other side, the world opened wide. Cold air, clear sky, the faint stars above the plains. They didn't stop until the lights of their pursuers faded into nothing. Only then did he slow the horse and let them breathe. She slid off the saddle and dropped to her knees, coughing. The earth beneath her palms was cool, wet from a hidden spring. She could hear her heartbeat in her ears, wild and uneven. He dismounted beside her, eyes scanning the horizon. We bought time. Not much, but enough. Her hands trembled as she lifted her head. Enough for what? He looked at her, really looked, for the first time that night. His face was drawn, streaked with dust, eyes soft with something she couldn't quite name. "Enough to start over," he said quietly. For a long moment neither spoke. The plain stretched silent and endless, the wind whispering through the grass like a promise. Then he reached for her hand, rough fingers against her blistered palm. "There's an old mining cabin west of here. Belonged to my brother once. We can make it by morning." She nodded, exhausted, but her eyes held a flicker of something new. Not fear, not grief, but hope. They rode again under the stars, slower now, side by side. The chase was behind them. The unknown waited ahead. And for the first time since that morning, she allowed herself to believe she might live to see another dawn. Dawn came quiet over the mountains. The first light touched the snowcaps, then spilled down across the valley, soft and pale. A cabin sat nestled between two old pines, its roof sagging, its chimney long cold. The woman stood at the doorway, wrapped in a blanket, watching the light crawl across the land. Her face was streaked with dust and dried tears, but her eyes were steady now. The long night had burned something out of her, fear maybe, and left only the core of who she was. Behind her, the cowboy moved slowly, checking his rifle, feeding the horse. Every motion was careful, deliberate, like a man still measuring how much peace the morning could be trusted with. When he came to stand beside her, she didn't turn. "Do you think they'll follow?" He shook his head. "Not this far. Too many trails, not enough reason left to chase." The silence between them wasn't empty. It was full of things unsaid, of everything that had happened since the moment he'd told her, "Get on the horse." She looked down at her hands. The blisters had cracked open, faint blood lines against the dirt, but she didn't hide them. They were proof she'd survived. "You could have left me," she said quietly, "back there when the fire started." He gave a faint laugh, soft, almost sad. "Could have, yeah, but then I wouldn't be standing here. Neither would you." She turned, meeting his eyes. "Why did you help me?" He didn't answer right away. The wind moved through the pines, carrying the sound of birds just waking. Then he said, "Maybe because I saw what they took from you. Maybe because I lost something once too. And maybe I just got tired of watching good people get hurt." She nodded slowly, the truth of it sitting between them like shared firelight. He stepped closer, close enough that their shoulders brushed. "You've got a choice now. You could head east. There's a wagon line in 2 days. Or," she looked up, finishing for him, "or I can stay." He nodded. The morning light caught his eyes, clear, unguarded. For the first time, he looked less like the man who'd fought his way through a dozen nights, and more like someone who'd finally laid his ghost to rest. "I don't know much about staying," he admitted, "but I reckon we could learn." A small smile tugged at her mouth. I reckon we could. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was soft, healing. He moved past her to stack wood by the hearth, his movement steady and sure. She joined him, folding what blankets they had, sweeping the floor with an old broom she found in the corner. The cabin slowly came alive. The smell of smoke, the crackle of fire, the whisper of wind through the cracks in the walls. Outside, the horse grazed in the sunlight, tail flicking lazily. Later, as the sun climbed higher, she sat on the porch steps, mending a torn hem with a bit of thread from her pocket. The cowboy leaned against the post beside her, chewing on a stalk of grass. Feels strange, she said after a while, to not be running. Yeah, he said softly, but strange ain't always bad. She smiled. No, it ain't. A long pause stretched between them, comfortable, like a blanket drawn over a wound. She looked out toward the horizon, where the plains rolled on forever. What do you do now? He shrugged. Maybe fix the fences. Maybe find work with the herds come spring. Maybe just breathe a while. She nodded, her voice quiet. That sounded a fine plan. He tilted his hat back, studying her. And you? She smiled faintly. I'll start by washing the dust off. After that, we'll see. They both laughed. Small, real, the kind of laughter that came from somewhere deep, somewhere that remembered what living was supposed to feel like. The fire popped inside. The day stretched out clean and open. He reached into his coat and pulled something from the pocket, a small locket, tarnished by time. Found this near the river, he said. Thought it was yours. She took it, surprised. The chain was bent, but the clasp still worked. Inside was a faded sketch, a younger version of herself, smiling. She'd lost it weeks ago, back when everything she owned had been stripped away. Tears filled her eyes, but they didn't fall. Thank you, she whispered. He tipped his hat. Seemed right it found its way back. She closed the locket, holding it tight against her chest. I think maybe everything does in time. He smiled, slow, genuine, the kind of smile that belonged to a man who finally believed in peace. The world around them was quiet again, no guns, no smoke, just wind and light, and the low hum of life returning. For the first time, the woman didn't feel like a ghost in her own skin. She felt alive. The cowboy turned to go inside, pausing in the doorway. You coming? She rose from the step, brushed the dust from her dress, and followed. As the door closed behind them, the wind shifted, carrying away the last trace of the chase, the sound of hooves fading into the hills, the scent of smoke drifting toward the horizon. In its place came the promise of something new. And though no one on the plains would ever know their story, the land would remember. The way it remembers every fight, every mercy, every dawn that comes after fire.